Question 7. Looking back at my preliminary task, what do I feel I have learned in the progress from it to my full product? Firstly, I'm going to be looking at the skills I've developed since I did the preliminary task based on the pill scene from Sherlock, as I should have been able to learn from that and use what went badly in it to my advantage and avoid making the same mistakes in the main task the last call. I'm going to start by talking about the differences in camera work for the two films, as I feel there have been a lot of improvements from the preliminary task. The first aspect of camera work that has improved is the angles which we use to show meaning in both films. For the preliminary task, as seen here, the shots are shown to be of neutral angles. This was something our group did a lot for this scene. 4 minutes of neutral angled shots made the film very boring, and we didn't really manage to show effectively who was in control of the situation at given times. This is something that we improved upon and developed for our main task. Here we have given the shot of the detective a low angle, as for this scene he needs to be shown as more powerful than Andrew Winters. Similarly, we have given Andrew Winters a high angle, as he needs to be shown as weaker than the detective, so it appears as though he is being looked down upon. Next, I'm going to talk about the framing used during my preliminary task in main production. For the first set of shots on the left, we see that there are two examples of over-the-shoulder shots. For our preliminary task, we had two characters sitting down having a conversation for the majority of the 4-minute scene, so we needed to add some shot variety. This wasn't necessarily a bad choice, but I feel that we got too much of the cabbie in the shot because he takes up almost half of the frame, as shown, and it detracts from Sherlock's face, which is supposed to be the object in focus. However, for our main task, I thought that we did the over-the-shoulder shot much more effectively, as we had a plot line, which we planned out. Oh no. Which we thought of ourselves, and had the shot storyboard to look like this. Our protagonist only takes up maybe 1/3 to a quarter of the frame here, and the object in focus, which is James Brett's body, it makes it very clear. The next set of shots on the left shows an establishing shot in both productions. For our preliminary task, we had an establishing shot of the hall at Four Fields Primary School, which was one of our filming which was our only filming location for the preliminary task. For this shot, whilst I enjoyed it, I felt that we had too much lead room either side of the characters, which was unnecessary and took away from the conversation which they were having. Also, on a side note for the sound, we didn't use a microphone, we recorded it with the camera, so the sound quality for this shot was very poor. In our main production, we used another establishing shot for the scene in the interview room where Andrew Winters was interrogated by our detective. I feel that this one was way more successful, as it was closer to the characters and captured the moment very well, as there was supposed to be a good deal of tension, which there was. On another side note, we also fixed the sound issues in the scene because we used a sound kit to record the characters' voices to avoid losing quality when filming at a distance. Finally, for camera work, I'm going to look at the camera movement used in both productions. In our preliminary task, we used a camera movement for the shot where the cabbie takes a bottle out of his pocket and puts it on the table. It was supposed to be a point of view shot from Sherlock, and whilst the shot was not terrible, it was not that fluent and didn't look like Sherlock moved his eyes to follow the bottle. However, this was not a fault with the shooting, this was an issue with the camera, as we had no Steadicam or other piece of equipment to help make the shot look smooth. We amended this in our main production, where we had a scene of Andrew Winters walking, and the camera followed his footsteps. We used a spider rig to hold the cam, and this made the sequence very fluent and professional looking. I think this was one of the best shots in our main production. The next aspect I'm going to look at is sound and the ways we developed skills to improve our sound quality and use of sound in our main production compared to our preliminary task. The first part of sound I'm going to analyse is the dialogue used in the two productions. The most noticeable difference between the dialogue used in these two productions is for all of the preliminary task, the sound was recorded by the camera we were using, which meant we were left with a lot of background noise which was hard to cancel out in editing, and sound that was very low in volume. We also had time constraints for the preliminary, as we only had 3 hours to film the whole thing, and we had one shot at it, which meant that we didn't have much room to play with as far as getting multiple takes of a shot is concerned. So we were left with some less satisfying sequences of dialogue that weren't as refined as others. We developed the dialogue in the main task, as we had a sound kit to record all of the dialogue scenes. This gave us a higher quality dialogue scenes and reduced our minimal background noise. We also had more time to film each shot, as we had 3 different filming locations, as we filmed at one of them twice to make sure all of the dialogue scenes were up to scratch. The last part of sound I'm going to look at is the music used for our 2 films. We used multiple pieces of music that are not copyrighted to avoid copyright infringement if we ever distributed our film publicly for our main task. And we used a single soundtrack for the preliminary, which was quite effective but very basic. The music used in our main production coincided with the events that happened in the sequence. We had a change in music from a slow, eerie track to dark, loud music when the murderer was seen for the first time, so that the audience understood that there was something wrong about the character. The sound was much more effective in our main production than in our preliminary task. As a final note, there was one very key element to our main production that made it exceed the quality of our preliminary task. This was the effort we put in. We put in a considerable amount more effort for our main production than we did for our preliminary. An example is that we went out of our way to get an actor who we thought would fit the role of the detective well, as opposed to just asking a friend to do it. Although we did use Jack again because he did a good job in our preliminary. We got the graphics teacher, Mr. Hughes, to play our detective. We were all really satisfied with how well he performed as the detective, and it really enjoyed it as well. He also said that he was proud with the work we had done, which gave me a real sense of achievement that I'd never had with the preliminary task. Another example could be how we had multiple filming locations which our group had to go to film the different scenes, whereas in the preliminary we had one location which made it far less interesting. We also used more equipment this time, such as a sound kit, spider rig and Steadicam, while we only used a tripod and camera in the preliminary. As a result, the shot variety was higher, the sound was much more clear, and our scenes looked stable and methodical. When we were dissatisfied with the shots we got from the first filming session at the Three Horseshoes, which was the location we used to film, we immediately rebooked the equipment and redid all of the shots to improve quality and prevent any continuity errors with the time of day, because it was dark at 5 o'clock and we had to get it done really quickly, so we needed to refilm. These are the things that made our main task different to our preliminary.